Hello and welcome to this review of my Fortune Systems 3216 keyboard. I'd been looking to review something with these switches in. They're a quite interesting design from Digitran that they called Golden Touch. There were several versions of this switch. The one in this board comes with individual switch modules, although there were also versions that used a simple communal barrel plate, and even one that worked the other way around. I covered these in a teardown video earlier this week. They're a pretty cool design. I'd been intrigued since I first heard of them, and then someone found these switches in this model of Fortune Systems keyboard, of which a batch was posted on eBay quite a while ago. I bought the cheapest one of the lot for $50, but had I known that the day after a much cleaner one would be posted, I might have gone for that one instead. It's also missing a keycap here, but it uses Honeywell mount, so I just stuck a blank Honeywell replacement cap on it to mask it. Oh well, I've seen boards in much worse nick than this. Besides, there's also a version with Keytronic foam and foil switches, so I guess the switches could also be worse. The Keytronic version was 1 inch less wide, or 2.5 centimeters in non-stupid, so that's one way to tell them apart. It was dirty and yellowed. In fact, it's a lot more yellow than the color balance of the camera gives it credit for, but it's cleaned up very well, yet at the same time, the switches are a bit bindy on off-center key presses, despite reports from others that these don't bind, so I have to conclude that these don't like dirt all that much. It's probably because of the external coil springs. In my experience, these retain foreign particles rather easily. Best to get them clean then. Anyway, Fortune Systems was an American company founded in 1980 that is almost completely forgotten nowadays. Its founder, Gary Friedman, had a clever idea: take a computer, stick a relatively new, decent CPU in it, and make it a multi-user system, then target it towards businesses. That way you don't have to buy an individual microcomputer, as they called it at the time, for all your different users, saving substantial money. It was kind of what Sun Microsystems ended up doing, except they targeted the scientific community rather than the business sector, and they did succeed. The concept of the Fortune was pitched at Comdex 1981, featuring a Motorola 68000 CPU and Microsoft Xenix, a Unix-based operating system, for just $5,000, which would have made it a complete steal back then. And indeed, it caused quite a rouse at the time, so anticipation for the system was great. However, as it turned out, it took them 2 years until late 1983 to release it, and it ended up costing way more. A basic system was $8,000, but you really needed the $10,000 version with a 10 megabyte Winchester hard drive for the system to be really at all usable. Furthermore, when they started, they were plagued with technical issues, and the founder, Gary Friedman, was forced out of the company by the board due to all the mounting complaints. With their product not delivering and coming too late to make a difference, and their reputation in the gutter, Fortune quickly meant an unfortunate end only a few years later. The 3216 was what they finally released in 1983, and this was its keyboard. It's rather big, as you might have noticed. The large side bezels are there to match it to the width of the computer. It comes with 99 keys, and it uses a proprietary protocol. My proxy Ben made a converter for it, as he also owns multiple, but alas, it seems something is buggered on mine, because although it powers on, it doesn't output any scan codes, so I couldn't actually use it for the customary week, which is really a shame because I'd looked forward to testing it out properly. Like I said, it uses Digitran switches, which was a company that was well published at the time, but whose keyboard switches are quite rare to find. They still exist, but it seems their keyboard division, at least, also met an unfortunate end around this time. The switches use a kind of capacitive Z-shaped folded leaf spring over a sensing PCB. Again, I did a switch teardown video where I show all the inner workings of these switches in detail. They're quite cool. Check it out if you want to learn more about them. The most immediately obvious thing when you try out the switches is the wobble, which is unbelievable. Normally I don't really care about wobble too much, but this is by far the worst I've ever seen it on a switch. Look at this. You can even hear it rattle when I shake it about, see? They are linear switches, fairly light, and if you disregard the binding issues, which I'm almost sure is due to the condition of the keyboard, it's quite smooth as well. Not completely friction-free, but definitely good. With some lubricant, I think these would be pretty damn nice, to be honest. They make a pretty damn nice sound as well. The switches were noted, even all the way back in the late 70s, to be a non-spongy alternative to foam and foil switches. The mushiness of those designs hadn't remained unnoticed back then either. Furthermore, it has one of the highest reported MTBFs I've seen to date at 250 million operations per key, which is high even for a capacitive switch. Generally, those have a specified lifetime of 100 million operations. Although the true lifetimes of extremely durable switches like this is always a bit of a mystery, as it's generally a trade-off between how much a company wants to show off their switches and how long they can be bothered to test them for. Most modern companies cut off their testing at 100 million cycles. Either way, they are doubtlessly highly reliable, which makes it all the more sad I can't use it. I'm guessing it was the electronics of the keyboard itself that failed ultimately. Speaking of which, the actual keyboard is very well made as well. The case is moderately thick plastic and it comes with a metal mounting plate, although this isn't the more common painted steel but appears to be aluminium instead, as much as 1.5 millimeters thick. This brings the weight of the whole keyboard to a little bit under 1.9 kilos, a quite respectable weight, sans cable, which itself is a coiled and thick but surprisingly short piece of work with an 8P8C terminal connector on both ends, as you can see. The keyboard is very tall, as much as 6 centimeters, or if you're allergic to progress and standardization, 2-point-something inches. However, in a very nice, high-quality scan of a 20-page brochure of the 3216 system, they mention that this is low profile, which sounds strange by the standards of today, but compared to many 70s switch designs, definitely not an exaggeration. Take these big-ass fuckers from Microswitch, for example, which are pretty much just as tall just by themselves, and that's not even counting the keycaps, the assembly, or the rest of the keyboard. Anyway, this brochure is super cool. It always makes me happy when I look into the past like this is preserved so well. Tons of cool pictures in here, such as this ridiculously 80s looking tape streamer deck you could have with a computer. Anyway, I digress. There is also a volume control on the side of the keyboard here for a built-in beeper. This was not uncommon to have on linear keyboards at the time, as of course these otherwise gave no auditory feedback. It still beeps when I connect the keyboard, but not when I press any keys, unfortunately. There was originally a function key strip here, but it's gone now. Here's what it looked like originally though. The keycaps are huge but quite nicely made. As you can see, they have yellowed quite a bit. Originally the color scheme was kind of a beige and blue thing, but has become more of a yellow and teal instead. Still eye-catching, but personally I think the random blue doesn't quite fit the look of the rest of the keyboard. Considering they have yellowed so much, it'll come as no surprise that the keycaps are made out of ABS, but they're also double shot and quite thick at 2.6 millimeters. Look at these bad boys. I really like the lettering too. It's centered, which is pretty standard on keycaps with spherical tops, but it's also bleeding huge, and multi-legend caps like this 6 key didn't shrink them too much, so the keycaps look very filled. Nice! Overall, it's a very cool keyboard. I'd have liked to use it for real. Ben even made me a second converter, and when that didn't work, offered to swap keyboards so that I could show you a working one, but the cost of shipping one keyboard and importing another would have run into about 80 euros, at which point I might as well try to snag another actual 3216 keyboard. Who knows, maybe one day. That's it for this review. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And following is a typing demonstration of me typing on this keyboard.